Welcome back to Introduction to Synthesizers, a free class that will teach you all the skills you need to start working with synths. Now, so far in the series, we have focused on the foundations of sound design, covering various strategies for developing and modifying sounds. But in this video, we're going to change up the pace a little bit by learning more about different tools you have available for making a synth more expressive and performance-friendly. Strategies that allow things like velocity, pitch, modulation, and any other number of parameters to impact the quality of your sound produced, just like an acoustic instrument. And today, we will kickstart this new direction by discussing key tracking. Together, we will learn what it is, why it's useful, and of course, how to set it up and apply key tracking to your own sounds. So, with that, let's get started. Key tracking is a common tool. It allows you to modulate various parameters of your synth based on the pitch you play on a keyboard or in a MIDI sequencer. For example, here I have attached key tracking to my distortion mix. I've set it up so that the lowest note in my range, in this case the C an octave below middle C, has no distortion, where the highest pitch in my range, in this case the C an octave higher than middle C, has maximum distortion. If I play a C major scale between these two octaves, you will hear the amount of distortion increase as I move higher up in pitch. Pretty cool, right? So as a modulator, key tracking can be used to provide an additional element of realism and or complexity by addressing the very simple question, how should this sound change as I move up and down the keyboard? Now, while every synth is different, most key tracking setups will include at least three fundamental controls: destination, range, and amount. Now, both destination and amount should sound similar to you. These same two controls are at the very heart of the two other modulators we've covered so far, envelopes and LFOs. Key tracking is just another modulator, but in this case, it's linked to pitch rather than time, like both the LFO and envelope are. So, as we already know by now, destination refers to the parameter you want to control with your key tracking, in this case, distortion mix, while amount refers to the full range of modulation you apply to your key tracking, similar to envelope and LFO amount. In this case, the full range was 0% mix to 100% mix. For now, let's continue using this setup as our example. Our destination is set to mix, and the amount is set to the full range of the mix knob. However, the new control, range, refers to the total range of impact used by your key tracking. You can think of this as the full range of the instrument you want to build in your synthesizer. What are the lowest and the highest notes that you want to work with? Right now, I have that set up from C2 to C4. That's the octaves both below and above middle C within a MIDI sequencer. Traditionally, the lowest note of your range will have the lowest amount of modulation. In this case, that means zero distortion. While the highest note of your range will have the maximum amount applied. In this case, maximum distortion mix. The difference between the minimum and maximum is then traditionally split evenly between all the notes in between. In this case, Massive X introduces a slight curve by default. However, some synthesizers offer additional powerful tools for controlling the distribution of your range. For example, in Massive X, by double-clicking, I can add little waves in my shape. See how that works? But again, the default is to just split everything evenly. When it comes to applying key tracking, generally speaking, I usually recommend saving key tracking until the end of your sound design workflow. This is a tool that I like to apply as a method for making your instrument more playable and performable, rather than a key element of the sound design. But that's just a recommendation for starting out. But for the sake of this video, let's just assume that you're following my method. So you've created a cool little pluck synth that you like working with. You think it's got a nifty little sound, and now you just want to modify it to make it feel more like a natural instrument. And to do that, you've decided to apply key tracking to make the envelope shorter and shorter the higher up in pitch you move. Similar to how plucking a violin string, the notes last shorter and shorter lengths the higher up in pitch you get. We'll talk about additional applications in just a moment. But for now, let's just focus on the process of setting it up. Step number 1 is to set the destination of your key tracking. In this case, I'm going to set it to the length of my decay. Next, I'm going to go to my key tracker and I'm going to set up my range. In this case, I'm going to decide what's my lowest note. I'm going to stick with C2. And what is my highest note? Let's go C4. That's my range. I've set my destination. I've set my range. Now it's time to set my amount. For this, I'm going to find out the quality of sound I want from my lowest note first. In this case, C2. How long do I want my decay to be for my longest note? Let's actually increase that just a little bit, about 1.5 seconds. Awesome. Next, I am going to set my amount and find the highest note. I want my highest note to sound much, much shorter. So I'm going to take my destination, I'm going to drag the amount down until... All right, that sounds pretty natural to me. With the settings for my lowest and highest pitch taken care of, I can now hear the impact of the full range on my instrument. Cool, right? Now, of course, all of this theory is nice and dandy, but by now you should know to expect a few specific applications while you're first getting the hang of this. And with this in mind, there are 5 common applications for key tracking that you can practice in your own sound design. Number 1, and potentially the most common, is to use key tracking to create a uniform sound for your filters across the octaves. This strategy is so common that most synthesizers will have key tracking capabilities built right into their filters. We already talked about this way back in video number 2, so we're not going to spend any time focusing on it right now. Instead, let's move on to common application number 2, which is using key tracking to manipulate the length of your ADSR envelopes. And this is the strategy that I just demonstrated. The purpose of this application is to imitate the natural tendencies of many acoustic instruments, like plucked strings, xylophone, and piano. Basically, any non-sustaining instrument where higher notes have shorter decays and lower notes have longer decays. For example, a low note plucked on the violin versus a high note plucked on the violin. Low note on a xylophone, high note on a xylophone. See how that works? A third common application is using key tracking to manipulate things like FM amount, ring mod amount, oscillator sync detune, or a distortion mix, giving your instrument increased harmonic complexity as it moves up or down in pitch. Again, like we did with the distortion earlier in this video. Common use number 4 is using key tracking to manipulate your LFO rate, especially LFOs being used to provide vibrato. In which case, providing a faster LFO rate for higher notes and reducing it for lower notes can be used to create a much more natural and expressive style of vibrato perfectly suited for sustained instruments. But most generally speaking, key tracking can be used as one of the most useful tools for fixing troublesome sounds. Here, the general rule is, if your synth sounds great in one octave, but not in another, it's probably an issue that you can fix with key tracking. Simply identify which parameter of your synth isn't working the way you want it to, and then apply a bit of key tracking to help compensate. Now, before we end this video, we need to take a moment to address how this step can fit into your general workflow. First things first, start by deciding which type of synth you are trying to create. Lead, pluck, pad, bass, non-pitch percussion, or sound effects. And use this as a guide to set up your amp envelope. This is also where you could choose whether your instrument should be monophonic or polyphonic. Then experiment with things like oscillator configurations, oscillator sync, using things like unison mode, FM and or ring mod, and making small tweaks to the amp envelope as necessary before experimenting with filters. With the initial raw sound set up, You can then begin experimenting with how different envelope generators and LFOs can help manipulate various parameters to create more personality and color in your sound, including applying things like legato or portamento mode. Then, once you've got all that, you can begin considering the impact of effects like delay, reverb, chorusing, or distortion, as well as how things like noise generators can be used if they're not already being applied. Once your synth is mostly completed, that's when you can start considering whether key tracking can be useful in making your synth play more naturally, like an acoustic instrument. So with that taken care of, we have reached the end of another video, my friends. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Today, we have added the following items to your new synth checklist. If you find yourself working with a new synth and you can identify these simple tools, you will be that much closer to mastering your new instrument. A special thank you goes to my patrons and channel members for making videos like this one possible. You can use the affiliate link in the description of this video to grab a copy of any of the synths used in these videos so far and follow along with the rest of the series. For a copy of the official checklist, including everything we've discussed in this series so far and will continue to cover, check out the accompanying workbook available on my website, tabletopcomposer.com. So until next time, my friends, keep studying, keep working hard, and keep writing new music. I will see you in the next video.